Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to the Wednesday, February 26th meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. For those of you who had the privilege of parking in our extended parking lot over on about 300 South, we welcome you and invite you to our new exercise plan during construction. Why don't we begin by inviting you to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we move to our Safety First minute, we just wanted to take a minute and start a new tradition, but a well-deserved one, a suggestion by Carolyn, that we honor employees that have passed on from this life who were still in their service to us as a transit authority. Last Friday evening, a memorial service was held on behalf of Officer Meg Rowland. Officer Rowland started her career with Murray City Police Department in 1991, retired and joined the UTA Police Department family in 2012. And Officer Rowland passed away on February 15th after suffering from a brain aneurysm in December. Meg will be remembered as a beautiful soul who touched the lives of many, and she has been a valued member of our team and will be greatly missed. And on behalf of the board and the rest of the family here at UTA, we certainly extend our condolences at the conclusion of this meeting. When we adjourn, we'll do so in her honor, so thank you. Let us now go forward with the Safety First minute and invite Sheldon Shaw, if you would give that to us. Thanks.
Good morning, Chair, Trustees. Appreciate the opportunity as always. I want to highlight a safety message from a week or so ago, and it was a short and simple one, which was that safety is everyone's responsibility. And so as we show up to work, we need to take responsibility for our own safety and make sure we're doing things as we're trained to do and not take shortcuts, and also make sure we're looking out for our coworkers so that they don't make a mistake and become injured. And we're all responsible for system safety, and so if we see a close call or something that may become an incident, we need to make sure that's reported so we can address it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheldon. Bob, are there some public comments today?
We received some online. They've been provided to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, we'll move to our consent agenda, which includes approval of some minutes as well as an agreement and some policies, as well as a contract that we've previously discussed.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Let's see, is Shul with us?
He just walked in.
There we go, Shul. You want to give us an update on how things are going up on the Hill and any other things that are relevant to our government relations?
Okay, well, we have just about 2 weeks left tomorrow.
We're going to have you pulled out just a little closer to yours. There you go.
Okay. Yesterday we actually had a good committee hearing in Senate Transportation with Senator Harper's SB 150, which helps lift the TOD cap and requires municipalities to adopt stationary plan and a lot of things that we support.
Turn that mic just a little toward you. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
And I would suggest or advise that we support that, take a motion to support SB 150, the Transportation Governance Funding Amendments and Funding Amendments, Senator Harper's bill.
Okay. Are there any other bills that we
Yeah.
Why don't you go through them and then we'll
Both of them.
do them together.
The other one that I was thinking is HB 299, the Opportunity Zone Amendments, Mike Winder's bill. It recognizes that with proper planning, proper local planning partnerships, we can bring economic development in areas needed of revitalization. And I'm under the assumption that Representative Winder said we have a short window to be able to take advantage of this. So I would encourage that we support HB 299 as well as SB 150.
I understand it may be on the floor of the House today. Is that so we may want to pass a few notes in today. So anyway, please go on.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have two bills that we would propose that we take a position on. Any questions or discussions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to support these two bills.
Mr. Chair, I move that we support Senate Bill 150 and also House Bill 299. Senate Bill 150 is the TOD elimination of the cap, and 299 is the opportunity zones.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to support those two pieces of legislation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. And so we'll work with you on Representative Winder's bill. I think they're interested in having us put in a good word for it a little bit on the House side. So thank you. Thanks, Joel. We'll next go to our agency report with our Executive Director, Carolyn Cannon. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning. Just a couple things. One is we want to recognize Bob and his team for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. It has been awarded to UTA by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada for its comprehensive annual financial report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. An award of financial reporting achievement has been awarded to the individual or departments designated by the government as primarily responsible for preparing the award-winning CAFR, or what you call a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. The CAFR has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the highest standards of the program, which include demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the CAFR. Bob, if you and your team could please stand and join me in congratulating our Chief Financial Officer, Bob Bowles, and his wonderful finance team. Congratulations, Bob. Okay. Yes, yes.
Sure. Yeah, come on up forward here.
And I should just mention they're heading back to work on the 2019 after now.
You just keep making these winning teams here, Bob. So congratulations.
Congratulations. So I just want to, today, we're going to start giving a brief summary of just some of the things that are happening with UTA out in the community called UTA Happenings. And just to let you know that last Thursday, we were at a pop-up event for Rider Appreciation at BYU South Campus Station. There was, for outreach, we had a Point of the Mountain update to Sandy City Council yesterday, and we did one with the City of Draper last week. There was also 2 school presentations, which are today, Legacy Prep Academy School and Canyon Creek Elementary. So each week we'll give you an update of some of the things that we're doing out in the community. That's outreach and others in the agency are working on.
That's helpful. Thank you. And we appreciate Carolyn, your staff, and their good work. So thank you for your leadership. I'm assuming that concludes
Concludes my report.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll next go to an update on our pension committee, and we asked Kent Millington to chair that, and he's going to report out on that.
We are really pleased to be able to report a good result for the year 2019 in the pension area. 2019 was a very strong year for investments overall, In fact, in almost every investment category, from international to growth to fixed income, all of the investment opportunities were positive in the year 2019. As a result of that, we had some very positive results to be able to report to for our own pension. I might indicate that the pension funds are distributed in the following way. In investment growth stocks, we have about 63% of our investment there. In T-bills, we have about 10%. In some benchmark high growth bonds, we have about 26%, and we have just 1% in cash. As a result of the activity for 2019, we actually had a net increase of about $31 million in the pension holdings. For example, the net assets held for the pension benefits as of November 30. This is unaudited November 30 as opposed to December, because we don't have those final numbers yet. But as of November 30, we were at $232,926,000, almost $927,000. That was up from $201 million the November of 2018. So about a $31 million increase. We had contributions of $21.3 million into the fund. We had distributions of $16.6 million. And so we had a good increase in deposits versus those that were actually paid out to our retirees. And then, of course, the difference was the very strong investment performance that Cambridge and Associates were able to achieve for our pension holders. So we see in 2019 a very significant increase in the pension holdings that we have, and a very strong performance. Now, the last 2 days may have put a dent in that. We'll see what happens at our next meeting when we have a report for the first quarter of 2020. But the first quarter is a long way from over, and these things are cyclical, and we see some drop. You may remember that the 2018 results that we reported a year ago were not so rosy. They were down in 2018, and so we recovered very significantly in 2019. And it has been year to date, with the exception of the last 2 days, been very strong performance this year. And we'll see what kind of recovery we are able to see over the balance of this next quarter. But for the year 2019, we're very pleased to be able to announce that we had a very strong performance. Our pension fund is performing very well, and we're staying on top of the cash flow needs of those that are retired.
Any questions for Kent? Thanks, Kent, for that update. And yeah, where you go into these things and with a little bit of smarts, and then just kind of close your eyes on the daily basis. So thank you for that update. We'll next go to contracts, disbursements, and grants, and we have a change order in regards to vendor managed inventory contract, modification number 1 for additional bus parts. Todd, welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chair, trustees. This morning I have a contract amendment to bring to you for contract that was executed with the Aftermarket Parts Company, otherwise known as New Flyer, back in April of last year. If you remember, the vendor managed inventory contract that was originally for 3 years with 2 options for 100 parts that we had signed with and executed with them at that time. We'd like to add an additional 619 parts to that contract at this point. That contract has gone very well, and they've executed fully and performed very well to the contract terms. And so adding to these 619 parts will increase that level of parts availability to our maintenance department and increase our performance to them as well. The 619 parts will add an additional value of $3,882,810, bringing the total contract value to $5,132,810, with an annual contract spend of approximately $1,026,562. With this addition, that means that we will have approximately 20% of our high usage bus parts on a vendor managed inventory contract. So, with a guaranteed stock and 24-hour shipment, that really helps guarantee our availability of parts to our bus maintenance divisions.
So I know when we approved the original contract, there was, sort of this hope that sort of this supply was there, but not oversupplied, and that they wouldn't be waiting around a long time for parts that were needed. Has that, I assume by the addition of this, that initial thought or proposal has worked pretty well for our maintenance folks.
Right. On the bus side in particular, we're able to, of course, decrease our inventory level that we're holding on hand, because we can get shipment within 24 hours and have guaranteed stock at the vendor's side of it. So those parts in particular, we don't have any out of stocks on. So that's adding these 619 parts. We'll have guaranteed stock on those parts as well. I'm sure you'll have the question of where do we stand with the rail vendor managed inventory contract, and we have negotiated all of the major terms on that contract finally. We're just ironing out some very minor details that the legal counsel is going back and forth on some very minor details on. Expect to fully execute that contract probably, I would say, within March or April timeframe. So we'll be bringing that to you within the next month or two on the rail side.
Other questions for Todd?
Yeah, question, Todd. You've been able to lower the inventory that we're holding, but has the shipping costs increased to offset that savings?
Now, the costs that we bid this out included freight.
Okay.
And so the costs, in fact, the contract that we put out there was to meet or beat our existing contract or our existing purchase prices. And so we're actually coming money ahead with
Even with the additional shipping and the more frequent shipping and things like
right,
that.
because that
Very good.
freight cost was included.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for Todd? If there aren't any, I would entertain a motion on this change order.
I move that we approve this change order to include these 600 plus parts to the existing contract as has been explained.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for your good work on that. We'll move on to resolutions, and the first item up is resolution approving the adoption of the Woods Cross Station Area Master Plan. And we have Paul and Kevin. Welcome. We know that this was discussed with our advisory council a little, I think last week. You want to give us their feedback and any other information you have since our last discussion?
Yeah, you bet. So our last discussion, as you remember, was February 12th when we presented this stationary plan. We didn't bring any slides. Don't want to beleaguer the point. We've already presented it twice. But if you remember, the plan had 3 iterative development scenarios that went from focusing on UTA properties, focused on pedestrian connections to the west, to future high-intensity development. As you pointed out, on February 19th, that was last Wednesday, we presented to the local advisory council. So the conversation went pretty well. We seem to have had broad support amongst all of the council members. We talked a little bit about the purpose of station area planning and how it's going to be a tool to guide development decisions from now until when it ultimately gets implemented. And there was some discussion about the proposed uses and the densities, particularly around the platform. But there was general acknowledgement amongst the council members that the plan appropriately addresses some of the constraints on the site. So one of the big constraints, as you remember, is the Holly refinery to the north. So that limits a little bit what we can do on our site. But the plan did contemplate additional densities and uses, particularly to the west. Now, part of that conversation with the advisory council when they acknowledged that was that they did want to emphasize with their approval that we emphasize in our resolution and our approval to prioritize the pedestrian connections to the west of the platform, and to emphasize also the residential densities so that we could realize some of those other uses that were proposed in the plan. So those were probably the key feedback that we got from the council. Those have been incorporated into the resolution. That was incorporated into the resolution for the approval from the advisory council as it is for today for your adoption. Let's see. Any questions that you would have for us?
Thank you. I just wanted to congratulate you on your work in those efforts, and working with the communities is one of the critical pieces, I think, when we're talking about transit-oriented developments and talking about those individual community constraints. For instance, in Woods Cross, obviously Holly Refinery is a constraint. And the emphasis I think that I also wanted to articulate, which you did, is the advisory council's request to incorporate that access point. In this case, it's to the west of the station, and all of that potential development that can happen further out. I appreciate that you worked with the city to get them to get their feedback and their understanding of how those land uses can be managed with access like that. So thank you. I wanted to just congratulate you on doing that.
Thank you. There was one thing that I did neglect to say. We did invite folks from Woods Cross to be here today, and they regret that they couldn't be here. But they did. They did say that they were excited about their plan. This is their plan, and they would hope that UTA would be supportive as well.
Yes, I heard from the mayor on that as well, and he was very supportive and wanted to say that he was sorry he couldn't be here. So, but thanks.
Great.
Paul, what I heard in particular from a couple of the advisory council members, and you mentioned the pedestrian bridge. What would be our role in sort of encouraging that to move forward? I mean, I was thinking, during the meeting, could it be an application for CMAQ or some other kinds of funds, or where there's some things where, our grant folks would be helpful in facilitating that piece of it. And certainly as the development, begins to move forward. And I just wondered what thoughts might exist there.
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know what, we run into this issue at a lot of our stations where we do want to improve access to the transit system, and these things are expensive, and so it depends. It depends on the scenario where it happens. Sometimes we can generate enough tax increment to pay for some of these improvements. Sometimes the city would be willing to find within their public works some money there. We have been supportive in the past of grant applications and chase those down. I mean, we do have to be able to justify it, and there are needs throughout our service area. The nice thing about station area planning or that is that it does identify it's the first step. It identifies the need for those things. And so we can put that into our prioritization. We can work with the cities with their applications, et cetera. And then when it makes sense, the money will hopefully be there.
Is there enough thought or, maybe preliminary engineering to know where it would be placed, and are those sort of right-of-ways preserved such that it could materialize at least at some point?
I'm not aware that we went that far, Kevin.
I don't think we know in detail as far as exactly where it would be. The consultant did try to understand kind of where the placement of the electrical lines are, any kind of trunk infrastructure for natural gas, and try to find kind of a place for it to be that wouldn't be, that they thought wouldn't be too, or would be most likely for it to go. But again, I think we need to do more study on that to figure out, just what's possible.
One more thing to add is, as we're supporting these things, it would require a bit of UTA's property. And then we would, as long as we identify that as a priority and something that wouldn't be beneficial to our system, we would be working with the city to make sure to accommodate that.
I just, when we get to a point of, going out to some kind of RFP for a developer and they bring in plans, we ought to take advantage of their design work and their preliminary work to make sure that that piece is accounted for. And that's probably where you get into the more detailed engineering.
Absolutely.
Enough to know where it would work or where it wouldn't work, at least to preserve the option.
And structurally, I believe when you're getting into that level, once you've decided where you want the rough placement of that pedestrian bridge, I think working with the community to understand what that, which preferred scenario that they're ultimately looking at is going to kind of play into that a little bit in terms of how that land use is going to occur once that gets over there. So, but nice job.
Any other questions for Paul or Kevin? Okay. If there aren't any, then I would entertain a motion on this resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution, that we approve our 2020-0201, approving and adopting the Woods Cross Station Area Plan as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call.
Actually, just point of order, I think we have a wrong resolution number on that. Jana, can you give them the right resolution for the motion?
Okay.
Sorry, the resolution number is our 2020-0203.
03, okay. Do you want me to restate, or is it okay to just note that?
We can note that.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call. Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Kevin. Next item up is a resolution approving the First Amendment to the authority's 2020 budget. Bob, welcome. And I know you discussed some of this with the advisory council.
That's correct. The board reviewed this amendment 2 weeks ago. Then we talked with the local advisory council last week. They didn't have any comments on this amendment. As you'll recall, the amendment increases the operating budget by $499,000 for 4 planning projects and the capital budget by about $4.5 million for 5 additional capital projects or increases in those projects.
Any questions for Bob? Not, I entertain a motion on this resolution. Now, is this the correct number?
So then it would be 04?
This would
It's
be 04.
And the next one is 05, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve our 2020-0204, approving the First Amendment of the authority's 2020 budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the resolution, and we'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. That brings us to item C, which I understand is R 2020-02-05, a resolution approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with Salt Lake City for Tiger projects on the Folsom Trail and 300 North Bridge.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary. How are you? And Heather, welcome.
So this resolution, it's going to cover the stakeholder agreement with Salt Lake City. The agreement was actually executed a year ago, February of 2019, and it included, it anticipated 2 supplements. The first supplement was actually approved at that same time for the Folsom Trail. This second supplement is for the 300 North Bridge crossing. The amount for this second supplement is, the project is proposed at $6,204,000, and all the funds will come from the Tiger project and from our partners. None will come from UTA on this project. We had not passed by resolution the original stakeholder agreement and supplement one, so this resolution covers all three. It covers the original supplement one and today's supplement two. Any questions on the project?
I was just looking to see, do we have a picture in here?
No, Heather is going to do a little PowerPoint presentation after this. I don't know if that project is in her PowerPoint.
It's in the PowerPoint, but not with a picture.
Okay.
So we're kind of still working with the city. This stakeholder agreement will allow us to initiate design. So we have had some conversations with the city, and we have a concept that we used for our application for the grant.
Okay.
But that'll get refined as we move forward with design.
And then on the Folsom Trail, I remember years ago they did a major stormwater thing underneath the ground. Is this just finishing the actual trail itself then?
Yeah, so when they did that storm drain, they were anticipating a trail to come through that same area in the future. So the storm drain is in, and we're kind of running the trail on top of that. Yeah, and I do have a map of that in the presentation.
Okay, that sounds great. Any other questions on this one? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Resolution R 2020-02-05, approving the interlocal cooperation agreement with Salt Lake City for the Tiger Grants projects on the Folsom Trail on the 300 North Pedestrian Overpass.
Second.
Motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Millington?
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think that then brings us to our discussion item, which is a update and description on the Tiger First Last Mile project update. I think we had some questions about which projects we would see this year.
All right, are you ready? Am I under control? Okay. Am I in control?
That's yet to be seen, Heather, but we'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Hopefully I'm under control, yes. Okay, so some of this I've already presented before, but just to give a recap. So UTA was granted $20 million in Tiger funds. We've committed to $11.8 million in matching funds. That's comprised of funds from MAG, UDOT, city funds, UTA, and Prop 1 funds. So that's a total of $31.8 million. There are 161 different projects identified in the grant, and we completed the environmental work on all of those projects in January 2018. So the grant was then executed in February 2018. And our commitment in the grant is to finish construction by December 2021, but then we will close out the grant by the end of 2022. So that's just a milestone there. So here's the summary of Tiger projects. This is the 161 projects. You can see a lot of those are ADA ramps that have already been completed. Also, a lot of the projects are what we're calling the UTA projects, so the bike parking, bike repair stands, bus stop improvements, and wayfinding, and that's where the UTA funds are used as match for those projects. Those have not started yet. Just to refer to our website, we do have this interactive GIS map. You can go to active projects, Tiger Grant project, and you can search by city and see what projects are there, and it'll take you directly to that map. You can find the environmental document, the concept report. So like for 300 North, you could go on there and you could see what we have for the concept for the bridge. As far as agreements and contracts, we just mentioned for 300 North with Salt Lake City, we're going to execute that stakeholder agreement. For most of the projects, they're already in place, so we might be coming to you with a supplement to add budget if that's a need. As far as professional services, we have one design contract for all of the projects unless we already had a design. That's with Civil Science. We also have a contract with all the planning and design to review for active transportation design. And then our construction contract is with Granite Construction. So we already have the phase 1 agreement in place with them. And then as design is completed and we're ready to start construction, we enter into a separate phase 2 construction amendment with Granite for that project or group of projects. So to date, we have executed 12 amendments for projects going into construction. So for the 80 completed projects, as I mentioned, 60 of those were ADA ramps in Bountiful and Farmington. We've also done 11 bike lane projects in South Jordan, Draper, Harriman, Ogden, Farmington, and Tooele. I have some photos up there. The top right is Ogden, that's in on Grant Avenue. And then on the bottom left, that's out in Tooele. Out there, we did about 2 miles of bike lanes, and some of it has the green paint, some of it's shared, and some of it's separate. So that was completed this last year. We've also done one multi-use path project. This is the Parley's Trail in South Salt Lake City. Also, 2 bike share projects. Up in Summit County, we did 11 new stations for the Summit County bike share. And for Green Bike, we did 7 stations. So that photo is the one at the Salt Lake County building there on the top right. As far as sidewalk and crosswalk projects, these have all been in Farmington. The photo up there is a recently completed Hawk signal. This is right in front of Farmington Junior High School. For construction projects currently in construction, this is the Midvale Signalised crosswalk. So we put in a new signalized crosswalk that runs across Center Street. This is adjacent to our Center Street Trax station. And it essentially runs parallel to the tracks. So the new signal that we put in for the crosswalk is tied into the Trax signal system. So when the train's coming, it also goes red, even if there's no pedestrians there. So this was actually activated on February 14th, so it's open to the public right now. We just did a punch list walk yesterday, so we're just closing this project out right now. We are also currently working on the Sandy multi-use path project. So this is at 102nd South, so it's south of the Civic Center track station. Might be a little hard to see on the picture, but there's 2 little blue boxes. The one that's shown in the rail corridor is existing. So it's an existing box that was installed with the Trax line, and we're going to open that up so that we can create this east-west connection under the tracks. The other blue box shown in the East Jordan Canal, that's a box that we had to install in the canal so that we could bring the roadway over the canal. We had to do that work when the water was out of the canal, so we separated this project into 2 different phases for construction. The box work started in October, and I have some pictures. So that work started in October. We need to be out of there by March, mid-March. So these photos are older. This is them pouring the box in the canal. Actually, the water is now flowing through there, so it's fully functioning now. The second phase of the work, we've already started on that work as well. So we have to install a storm drain under the tracks, so that's kind of one of the first things they're going to be working on. But the overall project per contract should be substantially complete at the end of July, and then final completion is early September. So we're just kind of waiting on weather right now to really get going. So as far as projects currently in design, we have a project in Mill Creek. This is on Main Street between 3900 South and Big Cottonwood Creek. as you can see from the photos, there's a lot of areas where there's just missing pieces of sidewalk. So with this project, we're going through this area and we're putting in new sidewalk, ADA ramps, and then we're also going to be restriping the road and striping bike lanes on the street. So this project's fully designed. We identified the need for some additional funding, so Mill Creek is working on that. So that's one that we'll have to add a supplement to that stakeholder to add funding, but that'll be coming from the city and the county, not from UTA. So we're still hoping to start construction in spring or summer, and it's about 2-month construction, so it'll be done this year. We're also working with West Jordan City. This is the Wasatch Meadows Drive grade crossing. This is on the Mid-Jordan line, Mid-Jordan Trax line. So in the photo on the bottom, the street running east and west is Old Bingham Highway, and then north and south crossing the tracks is Wasatch Meadows Drive. So a little hard to see, but at the top left of the picture, you can see that the sidewalk kind of ends there in the parking lot. We're gonna pick up from there and install new sidewalk all the way around the corner over the tracks with all the pedestrian treatments that are required there. So the designer's finalizing that design package right now. We're working with the city on some additional funding as well, but still plan to go into construction this year. Also still working on design for the Lehigh Pedestrian Bridge. So this is within a UTA-owned corridor. There's no active rail, but there's an existing rail trail. This will allow for that trail to connect over Timpanogos Highway. And we should be starting this construction work in April. So this is one that we're in the process of negotiating the pricing, and then it'll be a phase 2 construction agreement.
Heather, can I ask a question on this one?
Sure.
And this is my ignorance, and Kent probably already knows this. My understanding is sort of the light rail extension would come down this corridor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The bridges were built accordingly.
Yes.
Is there enough room for that corridor and the trail, or is it
Yes.
either or?
Yeah, so with this design, we're anticipating a light rail bridge coming through the same corridor, so it's been designed off to the east more to accommodate that in the future.
Okay.
So.
Now, isn't this the bridge that connects the Murdoch Canal Trail
Yes.
to that then will go up into Draper and connect with the Jordan River Trail, so that
Yeah.
this bridge will make it possible for people to start in Provo Canyon and go all the way to the Great Salt Lake eventually, I think.
Yeah, so just north of here, the rail trail, it kind of ends, but they're just going to be starting construction on that piece of it to Draper, as you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, and then on the south side, it's hard to tell from the picture, but the Murdoch Trail runs east-west on the south side of Timpanogos. So in our design, if you're coming north to south, you're going to come over the bridge, and then you're going to be able to kind of come down and hit Murdoch, or
And
you
go
can
east.
continue and east or
Right,
west.
yes,
Yeah, and then
okay.
you can continue south, or you can continue south on the rail trail.
All right.
So, yeah. So, next update, hopefully we have some pictures. Any other questions on this one? Okay. So this is the Folsom Trail that we mentioned in the stakeholder agreement. So the yellow line is the alignment. In the top right, it's going to start from the North Temple Frontrunner Station, kind of follow the tracks along to 600 West. It'll cross 600 West, run along South Temple, then it's going to cross 800 West, and the area west of there towards the river is the Folsom Corridor, is an abandoned freight corridor. So with those grade crossings, we're working on the design with Union Pacific and UDOT. We are working to 100% design, but we anticipate being able to start construction in the fall per the current schedule. Any questions on that one? So as far as other projects that haven't started design yet, the 300 North Pedestrian Bridge, once we get that stakeholder agreement executed, we'll really get started on the design. For the Provo Pedestrian Bridge, we're still negotiating that stakeholder agreement with Provo City. And then for the West Valley bike lanes, that was scheduled as a 2020 project. So we have scheduled to start design in July of this year. The only other projects not mentioned in the slide are those UTA projects that I referred to, the bus stops and those projects. So we're actually working with GJ's group on refining that project list, and then hopefully can package as much of that as possible into one construction amendment. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Any questions on that one? Thanks for that update, Heather.
Yeah.
And Mary, thank you. We'll next then go to a Depot District project status update. Looks like Gray's going to take your place, Heather, and deliver great news.
I will say this, that Heather is doing a great job on the Tiger projects. If you didn't know, I mean, each one of those projects is its own separate project dealing with design, constructions, different stakeholders in cities, and it takes a lot of effort. So we appreciate
For whatever
her.
it's worth, when back in my old job, when I found UTA was taking the lead on these, I thought that is a pure act of mercy, because negotiating with all those different local governments cannot have been a simple process.
It's been a process, and Heather has jumped right in and done a great job. She's been with us now for a year, and she must like us a little bit because she's still here, because it's obviously not because of the project work. So let's talk about the Depot District. Fortunately, the ground and the building isn't shaking too bad today from that, so we're good. As you know, we are doing the initial phase, replacing the existing central garage facility. The central holds its capacity is 100. I believe we have 105 buses or something like that. We are over capacity. Our first phase will be able to accommodate 150 buses, with a future phase of going to 250. Also included with this is the maintenance building itself, and also the administration building that will be built as well. That building you see right there, the design has changed slightly, but that is the administration building, and we'll show you a layout of how that fits in here in a sec.
The white sports car yours?
You and I both know that you and I could never get into that, or if we got into it, we would never be able to get out. That's a small person car, not mine. So that just a picture of like last week in the upper left, and the lower right was about 6 months ago. Same camera, same angle, so you can see that it looks a lot different out there just from a few months ago. So what in regards to that picture, we did just complete phase 1 about 2 weeks ago, which is the demolition, the abatement, which we took down the existing maintenance building, that being the biggest structure. Along with that, there was a lot of underground items, a lot of concrete. It is not very good soils out there, and what we found in history is to build on not very stable soils, they just added more concrete. So we had some pieces of concrete that were upwards of 6 to 8 feet thick that we were trying to jackhammer out and get out of there. So there were some, and all of it was documented based on the historic nature of this area with the round table and the maintenance shop. It was all documented and photographed aerially on the ground and everything like that, so that we could see what it was and document it, and then we were able to tear that out. there is some contaminated material, and that's where the abatement came in, both in the building structure itself and also the ground material that had to go to some special, not all of it, but some of it had to go to some special waste sites to get rid of that. As well as part of this, we did cut off part of the breezeway building that is just out south of us here, and we finished that cut, and we had to do some adjustments to the gas line. We appreciate our attorneys being patient with us. I think they're past wearing their down parkas to work now. We've got a false wall built, and I think the heat has been restored to that area. So that is just completed, and we've moved on to phase 2. So as part of that phase is you see the darker green area. So the top right is our west parking lot that they started ripping out the asphalt yesterday. And that's what shakes Mary is my office now. And it's amazing how fast they can demo a parking lot. Right, Mary? So they are taking that out and going to be rebuilding it. In conjunction with that, you see just down below that is what we're determining or considering our east parking lot. We've added some new asphalt and striped some additional parking stalls. It's not as much as the west, but it does accommodate some cars, and we've asked people to now is a great time to take the train and to ride transit to work, because parking is going to be a little tight for the next few months.
Well, when they rebuild the parking lot, will it be usable in the interim, or is it?
Correct. Yes, it'll be. We will work to, and it's actually, it'll be for the next 4 to 6 months. They'll be working on it, but when the new asphalt and the new curbs and the landscaping and the striping go in, then we'll be able to use it while the rest of the project is being built.
Okay.
Does it have, I'm sorry, does
Go
it
ahead.
have the same number of parking stalls, or did you actually increase it, or how did that?
It actually has some additional parking stalls, and it's hard to see, and I don't have a pointer, but if you see how the triangular piece goes up and then it comes down and around the existing K&R. So that vacant lot that's right there is K&R bedspreads. And so just directly to the east of that, or down below it in the picture, is where the Hamblin and Latifa properties were. And so we are making that an additional parking as well. But that is because we're moving the administration building over here as well. So there will be some more people over here parking in that location. But through all of our calculations and everything, it should be able to accommodate the vehicles that we'll have here at FLHQ, in addition to the administration and the maintenance. Along with phase 2 is the wash building. That is the small green square kind of on the bottom left, not all the way to the left, but it's underneath the loop and underneath the viaduct. That's the wash building. We just cut the asphalt. We put asphalt down when we built the CNG fueling facility. The CNG fueling facility is in the very bottom left of that picture, and that was built several years ago, as you know. We cut out the asphalt just to the north of that, and are digging that out and putting in footings and foundations. Of course, anytime we dig out there, I hold my breath, and we did find a 10-foot by 9-foot by 4-foot thick concrete block, which we determined was an old pier cap to the existing bridge that used to be there before the viaduct. Apparently, when they demo things out, they just tear things down and cover it up and forget about it, and we get to find it later. Exactly. And then the final thing as part of phase 2 is just above the CNG fueling facility. You'll see the dark green, and that is a diesel fueling island that we will be building as well, so that we can fuel buses. There's also the fuel pump that we've got to fuel the white fleet over at Central will be moved to this location as well. So, and then the light green hatching that you see kind of throughout the site is showing utilities that are going to be put in as part of the phase and as part of the overall project. That now is a great time to put in some of those sewer and water lines while it's all torn up. Okay, and that is anticipated to be completed about the end of this year, December of 2020, with that phase. Phase 3 is the large one that basically includes the maintenance building and our administration building. It includes site work on throughout the facility, as well as the upper left of that is a detention pond that we are putting in as part of the design of the project. Currently, right now, with us tearing down the old building and designing the new building, we just had our 50% design review about 2 to 3 weeks ago. 90% plans are scheduled to be in the next 2 to 3 weeks in March. And then we'll have a design review, and then shortly after that, the plans will become 100%. Once we get the 100% plans, then we'll be able to submit those to the city to go through the building permit review before they issue us an actual building permit, which we are anticipating to get in late August or the beginning of September. So right now we are anticipating constructing the maintenance and the admin building in September of this year.
Greg, can I ask a question about the retention basin? When UDOT redid I-15 kind of north of 6 North, they just off the 6 North overpass, they put in a retention basin. But there were the homes to the west of it on 8th West in the spring got flooded water in their crawl space, and initially it was like, no, the thing was lined, and the homeowners were upset. And what they found when they pumped the thing out, amazingly, the water left all those homes. And I think somewhere they probably got it settled. And later they had to build a bypass to the city stormwater system. I haven't driven this a lot, but there's not a lot of things with basements in that area, are there? And to what degree is that? It's the right way to deal with stormwater, but I just wondered to what degree that's getting lined. And
right, and as far as it sounds like what happened at 6 North was, with that retention pond, it did affected the groundwater table, and so with that, it basically added water, and so it lifted the groundwater table up into the crawl spaces of those homes. This is in a little, this actually is.
That's a pretty. The UDOT one is pretty large.
It's a large one. With this one, it's a little bit smaller than that, and it's also, this one is on the east side of I-15, and the homes are, what homes there are, which aren't very many. There are some businesses, but that is on the west side. So there's a significant, not as significant, but there's a pretty good distance between this detention pond and the on and off ramps and I-15 itself before we hit our first building. But we will, I will make sure that we'll look into the design of that and make sure with the design of that, if it is sealed, and then what our agreement is with Salt Lake City as far as does that retain, and then once it reaches a certain level, then it actually spills out into the city's storm drain line. So we will check into that.
All right, thank you.
Once we start construction in September of 2020, there is a 28-month construction period. I've challenged our contractor to cut that down. Originally, it was with this last design plans that we got, they've costed those and scheduled those out, and they've been able to cut 5 months off of the construction schedule. So we're looking at the very end of December to 2022 to January of 23 of being able to occupy that. The type of construction, well, let's see, let's get into, and then phase 4, phase 4 is the canopies and the solar. We have yet to do the design on the canopies, but that can happen once the construction begins. With the other one, this construction will happen during basically the summer of 2022, and so that December, January timeframe when we're able to take possession of it, the canopies and the buildings, everything will be completed by then. So the type of construction. So here is, I don't have that very first page, or the very first slide showed, with our, I think that was Lauren's sports car, not mine. So with Lauren's sports car in there, that was an artistic rendering of the building.
Sure.
This is the bottom picture that you see is the design software that the architect uses when he's designing the building and with the type of finishes and the colors and things like that. And so I took that picture that he included in our last set of plans, and then I tried to get the aerial Google Maps or Google Earth to get the same perspective. And so I wanted to show you this to see what we have done in the design, because we did take your challenge to try and make it to incorporate as many of the old architectural features into the new architectural features. So if you'll notice on that old building, you'll see along that kind of the tan brick, you see the large windows that are in it. And between those windows, you have the vertical members, as well as on the north end of the building, you'll see kind of the large white vertical members. You'll also see how the roof has a step up to it there in the middle. And so if you look down in the rendering of the new building, you can see that same step in the roof in the middle that we've raised it up. You'll notice the windows that we have along there that will be there to help allow light into it. And then we also, between those windows, have the vertical members to help kind of give it that same look. Now, if you look at those vertical members, you'll notice kind of a line in between those, or in between each of the windows. The type of construction this is going to be is a vertical tilt-up panel system. They will actually pour a concrete pad on the ground and then bring out all their forms, and they will actually pour all of these walls on the ground on site. So they set up the forms, they pour the walls, they let them set up, cure for the time they need to, they'll strip the forms, and then they'll move the panels over, and then they'll do that again. And they've got, A, B, C, and D, all these different, the types and sizes of panels. But once they get all those poured and completed, then they'll bring in the cranes and they basically tilt them up and lock them into place. And so you have your outside walls that will go on top of the footings and the foundations. Then they'll install the roof, and then they'll start going to town on the inside of it. So the next, and then off kind of behind the maintenance building, you'll see the administration building. So as we spin around there, you can see in the top picture, this is looking at the west side of the maintenance building. And again, you can see the windows and the doors that are down below the windows. If you look at the maintenance building kind of behind the admin building, you'll see the same type of layout where you have the windows with the doors for the buses. And then the administration building is obviously new, but has a nice look that incorporates that as well. So I believe that's questions from you.
Go ahead, Beth, and then I've got a couple.
I just had a couple of questions. Just to kind of maybe go over some of the elements of the solar / where is the electrical charging stations in that iteration that you showed us just a couple slides back?
So right now, the plan that we have, that the architect is working on right now, the electrical charging has not been incorporated into the plan. With the charger, we have a charger over there that can charge 3 buses that will get moved over. Along with the Volkswagen buses, we have I think we have 7 additional chargers that are coming with that.
Okay.
Those do not go in the maintenance building. Those go at the canopy locations where we park the buses at night.
That's what I was wondering.
And so as part of the canopy design, that will be part of that design as far as where we put those chargers. We're currently looking at that of, do we install them on the ground? Do we put them up? Do we even put them on top to try and get them out of the way? Because they are not huge, but they're significant, and they could take up a parking stall. And so we might have to do some reconfiguration. So that is one of the things that we're going to be adding into the design of it. But that's just to accommodate the buses that we will have. When we open this, we have figured that we'll have probably about 25 electric buses or close to that we will need to charge and be in operation. If you noticed, we just installed our second en route charger over here that we can do the fast charges during the day. In addition, more than 25 buses, that's one of the other things that we are looking at, is if we're going to be charging upwards of 50 to 80 buses at this location. We're working with, matter of fact, we have a meeting, I believe tomorrow, with Rocky Mountain Power to start talking about the loads that's going to take. It's a very significant amount of power that it takes to charge these buses and that many buses. And so we're looking at our options with Rocky Mountain Power. What kind of power would that take? Where would it come from? And do we even need to have our own electrical feed, our own substation? I mean, we're looking at having our own substation right now to be able to accommodate that demand.
That makes sense. And then in future, obviously discussing the 25 electric buses currently, but in the future, is there ability to expand?
That's one thing that we're looking at, is that we're looking at, if we do expand, what would we need? You know, if we did put a substation in, this is where it would go. And, you know, right now we're looking at, you know, do we put in six-inch conduits encased in concrete from the substation to the, you know, to the canopies? Everything's gotten bigger and better, so we don't even think about 2- and 3-inch conduits anymore. It's now 6-inch conduits. So it's a pretty. So we're trying to future-proof it as much as we can, to put in as many things and put them underground, so that when we do, you know, when things change or when we add additional electric buses, then we're able to accommodate those without too much rework.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the thought behind, you know, what we can do to accommodate what we know we anticipate receiving, and then also any future electric buses. I had another question not related to that, and it was the you highlighted the structural similarities to the old building to versus the new. What's the exterior like again? I apologize. Some of it looks like it's concrete finish, and then some of it looks like it's something else, and I was just curious.
It'll be a concrete, it'll be a colored, and there'll be some texture, there'll be indentations into the forms and things like that to give it kind of that block look. The windows that you see are like a clear Lexan type of a material that will allow, they won't be able to open or anything like that, but they will allow light into it. I will also make a comment. You notice on the top picture of this, the existing structure, the roof had, and I don't know what they call it, but it's like the raised part of it, like that little extra gable on top, and it had windows in it. We did have that into the new design. However, what we found is it poses some additional challenges for the structural engineering as well as the cost. So we took that out, and you'll notice that there are a series of skylights on top. They're basically these solar tubes that are put in, and that actually provides, we've seen them in other maintenance facilities throughout the country, and it really allows a lot of natural light into the facility, and really the mechanics and the people inside the maintenance building, we've heard nothing but great comments about those, and so we install those all along the top to bring in as much natural light into the facility as possible.
Yeah. That's excellent. Thank you. I agree, and I think you also lose a lot of heat with those top level gables, and so it makes sense to minimize that. So thank you. I appreciate
You're welcome.
I think when Salt Lake City redid their fleet facility, they did something similar to that. I don't know if you've gone over to look at their facility.
I haven't seen
so
one.
it'd probably be good to walk through it.
Okay.
They might even have some things that they wish they had done or hadn't done. But it's they've got a similar natural gas refueling component to it. A couple questions for you, and I don't know if Gray, you have this answer, and it can come later. When I looked at the completion dates, and we've had discussions of new bus service in August of 21, and part of that limitation was having a fleet or a facility done. Is that sort of off the table? Are there alternatives that we're looking at? What are some of the thoughts associated with that? Because obviously it's a competitive construction market right now, and a lot of large projects, and almost everybody's desperate for skills.
Yeah, that's a whole nother presentation, is the status of construction in the valley. As you mentioned, there are some many mega projects going on. I did have the contractor compile a list for me just out of curiosity, and there's over $10 billion worth of work that is either ongoing or will be going on in the next little bit. You've got the airport, You have the new prison, you have the new Facebook facility, and then Google is also coming to town with a multi-billion-dollar project as well. So it is hard to find skilled laborers. Back to your original question as far as the demand with the new buses. So we anticipated, yes, that we've said that we're going to increase service. So what does that entail? We actually had a meeting last week with our bus planners to say, okay, what's going to be happening in the next, couple of years before this is open? Because our intention was that a future project was to do some expansion at the Meadowbrook facility. So our intention was that, hey, if we can expand the Meadowbrook facility to accommodate some of these additional buses that are coming on board, then we can do that, which is what we're doing. What we did find out is a lot of the new service or the additional service that we've talked about is a lot of it is extending the times of what our buses are currently doing. So that whether it be later times, as we met with Meadowbrook, they said we can accommodate some, the new buses that are on order right now, most of them are replacement buses. And so they will just replace the ones that are existing in service. They can handle some additional buses as well. But their biggest concern at Meadowbrook was with the increase in service was the amount of time that they have to service the buses. The buses are now rolling in at 10 or 11 o'clock at night instead of 8, 7 or 8 o'clock. And if they're rolling back out again at 5 or 6, then that time to service the buses has been compressed. And so they were very concerned about being able to service the buses in a shorter amount of time. So we've discussed with them, and we're looking at this Meadowbrook right now to add some additional service bays to allow them to do the regular maintenance, the oil changes and things like that, to be able to accommodate the additional service that we've talked about, at least for this first go around. And then when we start adding a lot of buses for the new routes, then we should be able to accommodate this. We're still working all of those logistics out with the service planners and exactly when the routes are going to come on and how many additional buses or new buses those are going to take. But right now we have a plan for those that we can house those at Meadowbrook and be able to do that.
Yeah, I just want to mention, you'll see in the next few weeks a pre-procurement for the design for that Meadowbrook facility. So we are actively working on that, trying to get that ready if we don't have this ready in time for any new buses that come in.
Okay. I guess at some point you'll be back to us with an update on cost. And
we will be back to talk about cost. Costs have gone up, and so, but I don't want to. I want to make sure that we're comfortable with that, between that 90 and 100% of where we're at, as well as what the demand's going to be for this electrical. Because as I said, adding 6-inch conduits throughout is going to be some additional cost. We did try to anticipate an inflated construction time. I've talked to several contractors, and they all are saying that since 2017, so just 2 to 3 years ago, we're looking at about a 7% inflation on construction. So from 2017 to now, they're saying all of the estimates look like it's about a 23% increase in construction prices over those 3 years. And so that equates to, it's really great for the economy. It's really great for unemployment. If you're an agency or somebody trying to build a big project, it hurts because we do have a limited construction force in this valley. If you do go to the airport, you will now start seeing contractors with their tool bags as carry-ons and check-ons that are now going from project to project flying there because that's where the work is. So
I remember in 2007, before the recession, that there was, it seemed like for a while there, the city was experiencing like 1.5% a month on construction increases. It was just sort of killing us.
Yep. We are, there's the airport, they send buses down to Arizona every 2 weeks to pick up drywallers and tile setters because those are two of the most in-demand trades right now, and there's just not enough here. So they'll actually go down to Arizona, incentivize them, and bring people up here. And then electricians, the airport is actually offering if you show up for 5 days straight, you get a $200 bonus. And if you do that for another 5 days, then you get another $100 bonus on top of that. So things like that just make it very, very hard to compete. Big D is a great contractor. They are doing all that they can on this project to incentivize their sub-consultants, to really try and look out for us. They know that we do have a limited budget. So they're doing all that they can to lock in the subs and to keep them here so that they don't lose them to other projects.
Yeah. Okay. Questions on this update? All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Greg. Let's go to, why don't we take a short break if that's okay, GJ? And then we'll come back. And so let's plan to reconvene at 10:25. Okay, we welcome you back from our break, and we'll go on to our next discussion item, which is our Citizen Advisory Board. And I know this was created actually just before we came, and so really it's new to all of us. You're taking a minute and just kind of going through it and helping us to understand the good work that's taking place here.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'm Nicole Bordeaux. I am the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at UTA. And today we're just here to do a brief discussion on the Citizen Advisory Board. I'm going to turn the time over to GJ Labonte to really talk about the genesis of the Citizen Advisory Board, just to give some background on that piece, go over how we've engaged with the board, the programs and the initiatives that we've worked with the board over the last few years. And then he's going to turn the time over to myself and Megan to talk about what we're going to look at moving forward in the next steps, and then get some feedback from you all about how that integrates into the new governance structure and some of the other consistency with our other committees. So that's kind of just the presentation we're going to give today, and I'll turn the time over to GJ. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. It's short. There's just a few slides that I just want to go over and then answer any questions that you might have. Really, what I want to emphasize, the leave behind for today, is about the value that the board's provided over the 2 years that they've been organized. And I highlighted a couple of pieces of the legislation. I'll mention it again in a second. But the key to the language in the legislation was they wanted to get regular riders. They wanted to get input and consideration from the regular riders on their needs and issues, but they also wanted diversity, both geographic and socioeconomic. So that's just something that I think is of value. So it was a good piece of legislation, at least this part was. And I also think it demonstrates that we want to hear. We are interested in what our, for lack of a better term, average riders need. And it's really been a minimal investment. There's really been no significant burden to UTA on this. So again, going back to where this all started, 2017, the legislature passed Senate Bill 174, which explicitly required that we create this board. And not having any other indications, we set to setting up this board. My staff, it was with the planning group at the time, but we organized a work plan to get this board organized. And it wasn't trivial because we ended up having a pretty robust nomination process, and that was reaching out to human service agencies, universities, public business, commercial businesses, and asking for soliciting nominations from each of those groups, and then vetting those. So there was many more than the 12 that were mandated by the law that we had to vet and choose. And then at the end of the process, when we had selected the final nominees for this board, we ended up with 10. Actually, there was 12 were required by the board with a minimum of 10. I will say we've since lost one member just to working requirements and things like that. He was no longer able to serve. But anyway, as we got to the end of this process, Jerry Benson at the time was our CEO. We issued a letter to each of the members, welcoming them to the committee and expressing our gratitude and that they would be receiving this complimentary pass for the term of their service. This is the diversity I was just referring to. So we've got the geographic diversity on the left there, coming from, I've got a board member that comes up from Mona. He actually works at UVU, but again, he's not transit dependent per se, but he uses public transit for his commute on a daily basis. Got a member from Overstock.com bringing kind of a commercial view perspective to the board. Anyway, that's the.
And we have a representative.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. I neglected to take a second to introduce one of our cab members. Chana Cummings is with us. She's representing Weber County's Health and Human Services. A very dedicated.
Welcome, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for. Thank you for taking it.
A very, very dedicated member of the board. Transit dependent. Just gave up her driver's license this month and commutes exclusively using transit. So that's just kind of the diversity that we were trying to. There's a bunch of other criteria in there. There was a little bit of income mixed in there. Age was another one that we wanted to see. Ethnicity. We did our best to really make this as diverse a board as possible. What have they done? One of the first things we did was a work session to try and find out what they felt the strongest issues were and the biggest needs they saw that we could work on their behalf in the agency. So we brought to them our wayfinding master plan. They commented extensively on that. They helped me when I was a new department. I was forming my own strategic plan for customer experience. I brought that to them. We got feedback on fares. They're really keen on the mobile ticketing and ease of access. We brought our bus stop master plan, told them, got feedback on that. I have a highlighted quote from one of the sessions that we have. No more puddle stops on core routes. That was one of their. So I think we can all imagine what one of those would look like. We brought the service choices team. We brought Carrie Doan and Alex Beam to one of our meetings, and they went through a service choices exercise. We've gotten feedback on safety, safety at bus stops, safety. Chana was commenting about the safety, really the necessity of the bridges that we talked about earlier today in the presentations. And in general, just the rider's experience. They bring that to us from a different perspective. So what have we received back? Again, customer strategic plan. They gave us a lot of insights as to the types of riders that we have out there. There's a wide cross-section, and I think every one of those is represented on this committee here. And the wayfinding plan, they talked about better access to to our system, not just from the signage in the system, but physical access, meaning complete sidewalks. And actually Heather's presentation talked a lot about that too. So you can kind of see the nexus where we are able to go back to the cab and say, these are the initiatives that we're engaged in that we feel like are addressing some of the comments and the points that you've made in the past. So they're not a decision-making body. They simply bring their comments and customer experiences to us, and we respond accordingly as staff. And so I think that's it. So
I think one of the things on this page that's really important in kind of thinking about how we gather information in community communications and marketing and engagement is GJ oversees our onboard survey, which is a higher level we do every 4 years. We get that from our riders. Andrea gets a perception benchmark survey where we get it from our whole agency. And I'm going to turn the time over to Megan a little bit to talk about engagement. But these are all different levels of how we're getting feedback and doing the feedback loop from our riders, from our customers, and those are two different definitions, to make sure that we are responsive to the people that we serve at this agency. So going forward, I just want to give you all kind of our next steps and why we're here from you. So GJ talked about kind of the genesis and what we need to do, but we're really at an opportune time for us at the agency with Megan coming on to look at this now to say, okay, we have new leadership. We need to relook at the charter because it doesn't align with the new leadership. It has a name that says a board. It's not consistent with like the CAT committee. And so I'd like my team, being Megan, she's been here all of like a month, to really look at that charter and say, how does this fit within all of those gathering points to continue that engagement process and kind of on that tier. And so make sure that it's consistent with the other committee, probably looking at the CAT committee. And then how do we work together? Is there an opportunity to have those two committees together? Change the name, work with Mike, work with the committee to see if this is the right feedback loop and if they're on that spectrum. What would you like to add there?
I will just reiterate that I think moving forward, the CAB could be a really important piece of our engagement work. And as we develop the community engagement strategy for UTA, they're a really essential touch point to have that public perspective and diverse community experiences readily accessible to us staff members at UTA. And then I think just really that level, they provide an extra level of assurance that we're getting the public an opportunity to weigh in and kind of voice or perspectives on some of the decisions or plans. Any questions?
Beth, looks like you had your mic on. Did you have a couple?
I did, but I'm recognizing, of course, that you are going to be overlooking or re-looking at everything and kind of seeing what can be, what can complement and then what you need to change. But I did have a couple of questions. Like the first one was the improve of the website. I understand that, but yet that's pretty broad.
It is.
So,
but it's also a key point that they've made, and what we're doing now, and I don't know how much you are aware of that, but we're overhauling our current website. Mm-hmm. And so some of the features that they'd like to see can now be incorporated. If it's
is it the connectivity piece? Like if I wanted to go and know real time where my bus is,
sure.
How do I do that? And that's what they're looking
So,
for. Is that generally?
Yeah. So as we've looked at redoing the website, and I think you've heard this, we look at the stats of why do people come to our website, and the first reason is writers, right? Writers want to see that. And so how are we prioritizing the information there, and what is the most accessible and look of that? And so while we're fixing the back end, we will also go back to them and say, is this what we think we heard, right? So it's going back, and they said, yes, it's not accessible to the ride time information. And most of what we heard was the detour, the scheduling, things that we've worked on the back end are, I can't remember, it's the how you pay to get things. And these are things we knew, and these are the things we're working on prioritizing in our website changes. So those are kind of the detailed items that they talked about, and that's what we've been working on. But then we need to close that loop when we do fix it and go back and say, now, is this what we heard, and is this functionally the improvements that seem to work?
Right. And I appreciate, this whole overview of this and seeing where we can improve that connectivity portion of that. I think that's a frequent question that I hear is like, well, how do you know if you don't, for some reason, have Twitter, how do you know that there's a bus bridge, or how do you know that there's other components to what might occur? And so I think that anything you can do to increase the ease of use for people looking to try to figure out what their day is going to look like, I think is probably a very good goal. So I just wanted to say thanks, and I appreciate that you are going to be taking all of these components into consideration as you look at this moving forward.
I'll just add again, I have some comments that we've gathered through the course of our meetings there, but one explicitly is an inclusive mobile app, especially to allow them to purchase fares. And we're currently working on that also integrates to your trip planning, and we're striving to get a door-to-door trip plan, which would include the first last mile, like Via or Scooter or bike share. And then they say they want immediate alert information. So they want push and text notifications. Again, a current initiative that we're working on.
Which you all approved. So that's supposed to be launching soon. So these are things that we've heard, made sure that it wasn't just an anecdote, came back, looked at it, came to the board, worked through it, and then it's been valuable throughout. So thank you.
A couple of thoughts I was just thinking of, and I noticed, and it's definitely not a criticism, I didn't see anybody from representing kind of the Davis County area. And
We try.
yeah, so and it's tough sometimes when you hit a particular expertise or something, you'll get a lot from a particular segment, and but it would be good to have a commuter from Davis County at some point.
Sure.
Did-
The irony is, and it's just more anecdotal, is that we do have a representative from Salt Lake County who commutes daily to Ogden. So he's
Okay.
actually representing Ogden Human Services, but lives physically in Magna.
in Magna. Well, I mean, what couple thoughts I had is, and we ought to engage our local advisory council as you look for. I mean, I'm assuming there's some kind of term limit.
3 years.
Three, but is it like, can they just serve for 3 years? Do they can do it again?
Up to 2 terms.
Up to 2 terms. So like when you get to the rotation part, I think as we're looking for folks, we ought to, through our board staff, approach the advisory council to give us some names and have them help engage. They're a little more on the ground on the local level and might have some suggestions.
That would be helpful. That was one of the bigger challenges, was finding the
Thank you.
agencies.
Yes.
And then the champions within the agencies to nominate people. So, yeah.
And I think it would help them engage too in a way that would be meaningful. The other thing I just thought about, and my late brother talked a lot about how to do something that was less cost effective, less cost, but hit a market of non-consumption. And I was just thinking, when I was volunteering for a junior achievement thing a year or so ago, the individual who I interacted with there that was on their board, who was well positioned in the community, said, I really want to try transit. I don't know what to do and how to go about it. And that sounds, and I don't think it's a socioeconomic thing. I think it's just an experience thing. Where do you go? How do you get past this thing? And I've clearly been learning it over the last year a little better. And I think we sometimes take that for granted, and especially, sort of as a newbie in the transit community. It's not like, while there is some sort of cross pollination of jobs, usually those in transit stay in transit in large part for their career. And so they become sort of seasoned experts at it, and are probably one of the most dedicated groups of employees I know. But you don't have sort of that new exposure of how does this perceived. And I realize this is a lot your area, GJ.
It is. That's my job.
But I think this group could help us think about a little bit, like, how could we accomplish something that they really need, as opposed to something that the whole industry is doing. And it's not that we wouldn't take a look at what the industry is doing, but sometimes, especially if you're looking at, nationwide, at decreasing ridership, somewhere we're not meeting a need in their life, right? And some of it's tied to gas and other circumstances, but something else must be missing in that consequence, or that scenario. I just wonder if somewhere in that we can extract or sort of get out of what are we missing. And that, so having an actual turnover of the board,
Sure,
I think is important. 2 terms is not bad. I think, you want some continuity of experience, but I think getting new folks in that maybe only have used it a couple times.
okay.
And talk about what their fear is.
Okay. We only targeted existing riders because that was part of the legislation. They needed to be a transit rider.
Yeah, I just think somehow, it wouldn't be the whole board, but I think
Sure.
you got to get that voice in there, because out there is a very untapped audience of ours.
Agreed.
And anyway, I just think we ought to look at it. So, and I also, the other part of that I was thinking, Megan, in your context of, as you're looking at community engagement, we sort of picture where we think we need to be, but this group could actually give us some information about who doesn't know anything about our product, right? How do we go, especially if we're going into a new market? You know, we educate over time, and I think experience has shown that the ridership increases as people get familiar with it. But my daughter just last night, she attends some university classes out at the U Sandy campus and had been taking a bus, but the bus leaves like right as class gets out. And I just suggested to her, I said, well, just go and walk 2 blocks the other direction and stand inside the VIA zone, right? And then request the VIA ride to the front runner station. And so, you know, she's 20 and she's game for it. I said, the worst case scenario, call mom and dad, will come pick you up. But she did it and got to the front runner station and actually got back 15 minutes to 20 minutes earlier here to Salt Lake than she normally gets. And I think, you know, all those students in there probably who would have probably maybe jumped on that opportunity haven't, you know, just haven't experienced that or haven't thought about it. So I think, anyway, I just think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of groups out there for us to engage, especially at the younger level that are, you know, are probably more inclined to start trying to use transit. I mean, not that we're going to wipe off the old middle-aged folks like myself, but it, you know, if we're hitting a market of non-consumption, it's somebody who can't afford a $30,000 car, or at least not two if they're married or have partners. So I just think somewhere in there we ought to think about that and how can we engage that group. So
I wanted to, I love that Carlton talked about that because it just clicked in my head that I've been experimenting a little bit on communications and which groups to talk to, and I thought, what better place than to experience it and treat my own city as a guinea pig. And so I called Bountiful City and I said, hey, I want to talk to your youth council and I want to talk to your planning commission and do a presentation. Would that be okay? And of course, they have to say yes to me. So it worked out. And I think one of the things that really I was struck with is like having that engagement piece with the youth, because like a couple months ago, there was a local, maybe it's just a month ago, my gosh, it just goes fast. There was a local officials day. And I think one of the takeaways from that is that the youth didn't really think that transit was much something that they might need or use. And so I had that discussion with the youth council and I thought it was fascinating because they actually, when I told them, I said, so if you're going, I'm like, how many are going to BYU? How many are going to UVU? How many are going to the U? Don't take a car. They're telling you that. Your own universities are telling you that. And they were really kind of surprised. And I thought, wow, it was a great little 5-minute segment. But I think that reaching out to those different types of groups, like Carlton said, I thought that was just excellent. It really does make a difference if you're kind of connecting with those people that you really want to have them take a look at this from a long-term strategy. So thanks.
Great comments.
We'll come back once we get the charter redesigned with some of these ideas, and then we'll come back to you with something.
And we'd welcome the board itself giving some feedback on that charter. I think that'd be
great.
A healthy process. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Great. Any other questions? Ken, did you have one?
Well, just this comment, as I was reviewing the packet before the meeting, I had a chance to visit with GJ and Nicole earlier in the week at some length about the activity of the board and what they've contributed to us, and so I appreciated that update. It's good to see that we're getting that kind of input, and we've got an awful lot more that we can learn from people who are using our system. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, and thank you for attending today. Appreciate coming. So thank you. Let us go on to item number 11, which is service and fare approvals. And Monica, I think as we got into some discussions, realized we had a need internally for those serving in our committees and boards.
Yes, which is why I'm bringing this request to you now. So it is for the approval of complimentary passes, and the three groups that we're looking at are the Local Advisory Council, the Committee on Accessible Transportation, and then the Citizens Advisory Board that you just heard about. And so to effectively participate on these committees, we do expect the members to have firsthand experience and be out there using our system. And so in an effort to facilitate the use of them using our system, we will provide them with complimentary passes, and they can use these during the term of their service. And then when their term ends, we will go ahead and discontinue those passes. So we estimate that the total value of those passes is approximately $118,000 annually. And with your support, we will move forward with the administration of these passes unless you have any questions that I can try to answer.
Monica, the 118,000 really is only if they maximize its use, correct?
That's correct. So we are using the premium monthly pass rate. That's $198 per pass. And we assumed that everybody on the board would get a pass and maximize it. So we know that the amount wouldn't be any more than that, but depending on how often they use it, if we were to calculate the trip value, it could possibly be less than that.
Other questions for Monica on this one? If there are none, I would entertain a motion on this complimentary passes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the complimentary passes for our UTA committee members, the Local Advisory Council, the Committee on Accessible Transportation, and the Citizens Advisory Board.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Monica.
Thanks.
Would note that due to some scheduling, or no need for a meeting next week, I should say, our March 4th meeting has been canceled, which I think puts our next meeting at March 11th. Is that right, Jenna? Okay. And so no meeting next week. I know you'll all be disappointed and don't know what to do with yourselves, but but somehow you'll be grateful to have 3 hours back in your life. We do have a closed session to discuss a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, and so we'll be holding that over in the engineer's cabin. Thank you. And then we'll return to adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go to closed session.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes, and so we'll go into our closed session. We've returned from our closed session, and prior to adjournment, we'll just take a moment of silence on behalf of our former officer, Meg Rowland. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll stand adjourned on her behalf. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.